All right, we have people joining. Good morning, afternoon for some of y'all, and maybe evening for some of y'all, everyone. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes, so we can allow some people to join. In the meantime, let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat panel. To start off, Ling and I are calling in from the IVO HQ in San Francisco. Caitlin, where are you calling in from?
It looks like I'm in San Francisco, but I'm in my home office in Houston, Texas.
Awesome. I love Texas, and we have a couple people from Longview, Washington, Cleveland, Ohio, Phoenix, Orlando. So we are covering all of the states today. Pasadena, Portland. Great, really great turnout, guys. Thank you for joining. Awesome. We're still seeing the attendee count climb up. I'm gonna give it just one more minute and then we're going to get started. Anyone outside of the US here? Oh, we have someone from Canada. Cool. I think we can get started. Welcome, everyone. We have our friends Caitlin and Ling joining us today to chat about Pinterest's very, very cool approach to adopting legal AI. To start off, we have some housekeeping matters. This session will be recorded and sent out to you 48 hours after the session has concluded. So if you do need to drop at the 30-minute mark for another meeting, no worries, you will be getting the recording. Q&A is highly encouraged. We love an engaged audience. So please make use of either the chat panel or the Q&A tab to ask your questions. I will be monitoring both and helping to raise any questions that come up to our amazing speakers as well. Finally, chat and network with all of the attendees here. There is a good mix of IVO customers and hopefully future IVO users, so feel free to drop your LinkedIn profiles here so we can all stay connected. And we have some really amazing speakers today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we're going to make it a little bit more fun. When you guys introduce yourselves, tell the audience your name, what you're currently doing in your roles, and your biggest contracting ick or pet peeve. And for the audience, if you're feeling like you want to chime in, feel free to drop your contracting ick in the chat as well. But Ling, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Zix. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. I lead our legal engineering team here at Ivo, and our team sits between the legal, product, sales, and customer success teams to really make sure that Ivo is a leading product that is made by lawyers, for lawyers. Previous to Ivo, I was a corporate M&A attorney, and then I was in-house counsel at a New Zealand tech company. My biggest contracting pet peeve is, and this is probably prior to having Ivo, is opening up a statement of work to review, which makes several references to other agreements or makes references to underlying agreements that I just can't find anywhere else. And I have to ping, people from all over the business just to find these documents. Over to you, Caitlin.
Thanks, Lang. That's a good ick. I am a manager on Pinterest. It's hard to say Pinterest's commercial legal team, and our commercial legal team is comprised of commercial attorneys, corporate attorneys, marketing legal attorneys, and folks who work on our advertising contracts as well. We are a small but mighty legal team that is a part of a larger legal team as well. Prior to Pinterest, I was in-house at a couple of other companies, and I began my career at Baker and McKenzie doing oil and gas lease transactions. My biggest contracting ick, I would say, is when I'm working with like a counterparty, and every time we have a turn of the document, they want to have a call. I like that. just really icks me. And as much as I love talking to counterparties, I just don't want to do it that often. So I think that would be my biggest contracting ick.
Very valid. I feel like I recently developed a new one where like one of our counterparties actually redlined over our red line. So that was a fun one. Cool. I am going to hand it over to our very amazing speakers after this, but here's an overview of our agenda for today. We'll enter a short fireside chat with Ling and Caitlin about how Pinterest Legal views AI before moving on to how Caitlin leverages AI in her contract work on a regular day. We have 3 use cases to show you, and afterwards we will wrap up and go into Q&A, so please ask your questions as well. Cool, Ling, on to you.
Thank you. All right, Caitlin, it's so great to have you here today. I'd love to start at the very beginning, and I know you briefly touched on this in the introductions, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your role at Pinterest. What does the commercial legal team actually cover day to day? How big is the team? And what was the most surprising thing about the contract volume when you joined Pinterest?
Yeah, thanks, Ling. So day to day for the commercial team, that means we support contracts that essentially keep the lights on or keep the business moving. So that includes NDAs, supplier and SaaS agreements, DPAs, MSAs, real estate and workplace deals, benefits deals, outsourced vendor deals, privacy, security, AI issues. The whole gamut is what our commercial legal team handles. We're a lean team on the day-to-day commercial lane, but as a part of the broader function, it's about a little less than 2 dozen people on the team. Again, that includes commercial, corporate, marketing, and advertising as well. A big part of our job is just helping the business move quickly while still being like thoughtful and consistent about risk. The thing that I would say surprised me the most was the mix. So it wasn't just like your strategic large tech SaaS agreements. It was a combination of high volume paper and very specialized work. Like I mentioned, the real estate benefits, very privacy heavy agreements, and now very AI heavy agreements. So for instance, you can move from, a simple NDA to a DPA in the morning and then a complex SaaS agreement and then a lease in the afternoon. So that mix is really what drives the complexity for our team.
Amazing. And yeah, you mentioned there is a really high volume of contracts that a small and lean team has to get through. So maybe walk us back to pre-legal AI days. What were some of the real friction points when you're dealing with these high volume agreements that, might not be high volume, but might not be high value?
Yeah, it's honestly really hard to think about pre-IVO or pre-AI days at this point, which is wild to say. Everything is just moving so quickly, but the amount of time that we save using IVO has really changed things for us. But before IVO, a typical week was just a lot of queue management and context switching. So like I mentioned, like going from an NDA to a lease to a DPA to a SaaS agreement, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of mind shifting. And so we were just moving through all of these different types of agreements with a manual playbook. When we did actually have a playbook. There were other instances where maybe we didn't have a playbook yet and we're checking our previous positions and other agreements, which is a much more taxing exercise. Um, so the friction with those sort of lower value deals is that first pass took real like lawyer time and real thought, and the playbook was manual. So every contract required like a slightly different lens, and it just takes a lot of time to jump in and out of agreements like that. So even when the work was repetitive, it wasn't light or it wasn't like an easy task or a quick task. And of course, the pressure is always to move faster and faster and faster. So I think the friction there was just the manual process of doing each and every agreement, and also being asked to move quickly. So that I think that's where the friction lies is that place between having to really dig in, but be very quick and efficient as well.
Yeah, and then I think during some of our prep conversations, you mentioned that the team did also lean heavily on outside contractors to handle some of that overflow. What were some of the trade-offs with that model? And I guess, yeah, what made you guys start questioning it?
Yeah, I think one is cost, right? I think that that is a big factor. But I think beyond that, when volume spiked, we did lean on contractor attorneys. And I think that helped with capacity, but the trade-off was always sort of uh, ramp up time and then consistency after that. So, every new person has to learn our positions, our risk tolerant, our judgment, and sort of get aligned with the judgment calls that live inside the team. So you would solve in the short term, but not always for that repeatability or efficiency over time. So I think that's when we started questioning that model and whether we were really scaling or just sort of adding more people as volume increased.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so I guess when the Pinterest legal team started looking at AI tools in a market that's pretty noisy, what made Ivo sort of stand out?
I think is I think the practicality of Ivo is what made it stand out. The word add-in mattered, the click to red line experience mattered, the quick, the fact that it was quick to correct itself mattered. And honestly, the support I think is probably the most outstanding piece in that, Ivo is embedded in Slack, and whenever we have an issue, we can just Slack the Ivo team and get it handled right away. So I think that willingness to troubleshoot with us in real time is a real value for us. And it felt like a product that was built for how lawyers actually work and not just a product that demos well, right? Like you have products that will take your playbook and sort of just paste your playbook into the contract, and that's not really helpful. So the way that Ivo can sort of understand the context and the underlying agreements and mimic how you would redline an agreement is really what made it stand out to us.
Yeah. And then I guess also in terms of, I think a lot of our customers resonate with us when describing AI tools as sort of this associate partner or junior lawyer, senior lawyer framing, where the AI is kind of like a smart associate and then you're the partner, you are driving that car. Can you sort of unpack what AI owns in your workflow? And I guess we'll get to this later in our live demo, but yeah, what Ivo or what AI owns in your workflow versus where you absolutely have to stay in the seat.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. And the way I would describe it is like the way a good associate would sort of do the first pass on any given contract. So, they would review against the playbook, flag issues, maybe generate red lines and help structure that risk memo. But, you know, I think in this scenario, Ivo is the associate and the human lawyer, you still have to own the judgment. Ivo can't make judgment calls for you. And even if you do provide Ivo with context, right, there's so many nuances sometimes in the context that even what you do capture, Ivo can't necessarily produce red lines based on that or make that judgment call. So, the human lawyer, we decide what matters in a deal, where to push, where to flex, how the contract fits the business need. And so I think Ivo really helps with that speed and consistency and sort of just doing that really difficult first pass. And once you have something to work with, the process is much, more fast, and you can really focus on making those judgment calls rather than that really tedious process of redlining.
Yeah, I think of it as like an artist starting with like a blank slate is always much harder than just
Yeah.
coming in and and doing your own tweaks to a piece of art.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Caitlin. I think with all of that, I think we're ready to see this in action. So I'd love to go to the live demo. Six, you want to go to the next slide? Cool. So the way we structured this is we really want to show how Caitlin works through a typical day or a random day on a Tuesday. So picture it's like Tuesday morning, it's 9:30 a.m. You just got your morning coffee, sat down at your desk. Walk us through how you actually start your day. So, contracts have been coming in from business partners. How are you triaging the queue? What does AI touch first versus what do you personally dive into?
Yeah, the way we get our contracts for review is directly through our business partners. We do have other technology we use where they can, email us or they can upload agreements to our software to be assigned to us automatically. And so the first thing I do is sort of see what's changed from when I logged off last evening, and what is new in my queue. The queue basically gets prioritized based on how our business partners, inform us on what's important and what can kind of wait, the deadlines. And so typically I'll start with something heavy to dig into and then push those lighter contracts to the sort of end of my day. But AI would touch first those heavier agreements where I know that first pass, like you said, that blank slate is just going to eat up hours of my time. I would much rather spend half of that time providing context for Ivo, um, coming up with a good prompt, finding those underlying agreements, and then having Ivo do that first pass. So that's sort of how I prioritize my morning and just jump in straight away with the toughest stuff and have Ivo produce that first red line.
Amazing. I think Dustin asked the question, do you use Ivo as your CRM or does it integrate with a CRM?
We do not use Ivo as our CLM, though that is something I think we will be looking at. We use Ironclad as our CLM, and right now they're not connected, but we are looking into facilitating that. So I think it would help us a ton because right now what we're doing is sort of downloading from there, uploading to or opening in Word and using Ivo that way, and then uploading it again then to Ironclad. So it is a really cool feature that we have looked at and are exploring.
Amazing. Cool. So you've done your triaging, you look through what's coming through your queue. It's 10:30 a.m. and you think that your most heavy, most high value agreement is going to be the lease that you just got sent this morning. So for today's webinar, Caitlin has kindly provided some of the contracts that her team actually reviews. We obviously have anonymized everything for today, but what you're seeing, oh, let me go share my screen. Cool. So what you're seeing here is a lease agreement that came in for Caitlin's review. And so, Caitlin, do you want to speak to how you would sort of use Ivo through this initial pass process?
Yeah, certainly. So this would I would upload the initial draft to Ivo and use that review 2.0 function. And Ivo was fantastic in taking sort of a manual playbook that we were using and turned it into a playbook that is now accessible in Ivo. So I would just upload or open the initial draft in Ivo, put that playbook on, potentially include any contacts that I have about preferred positions from my business colleagues, and then just start the review.
Yeah, Yeah, so if I just want to walk that through a little bit slower, so I think
Yeah, totally.
you're opening up Ivo, you've got the agreement in front of you, the agreement that you're reviewing. Ivo can like auto designate who you're representing, so the tenant in this case. We have a team of legal engineers who help make these playbooks, and we've got Pinterest real estate playbook loaded in. You can just select that. Once you go into deal context, and there's also a Caitlin's talking about, you can actually put in any sort of context in this box, which will inform Ivo's recommendations. And so, you could say we have a ton of leverage here, or, this is a landlord we've been dealing with for decades long. So we can be aggressive in our negotiation power. So after all that's done, yeah, you go ahead and press review. And then just for the sake of time today, I have preloaded a reviewed version of the lease. And so, yeah, Caitlin, over to you again.
Yeah, fantastic. So that review will run, and then you will see these recommendations, which will either align or not align with the playbook that is provided. And I think for this particular scenario, one of the things that was flagged would have been the alterations. And so I would just click on this specialty alterations um, recommendation here and see what Ivo has suggested I changed based on our playbook. And when I look at the language, I can tell that the changes provided by Ivo align with our playbook. So basically, we prefer to only remove specialty operations if the landlord has said that we need to remove them. Like we don't want that to be a surprise when we're trying to move out. Um, and so I think the first red line here is that um, we would only need to remove specialty operations that the landlord designates for removal in accordance with this particular section. And so that is a good add. I would keep that red line in there. And I think then down at the bottom, it outlines how the landlord should designate those specialty operations to be removed, right? So Ivo has added that they would be required to remove. Um, Landlord would tell us whether we need to remove those specialty alterations at the time that we tell them they are a part of our plans or specifications, right? So we know ahead of time before we install anything that we need to bake in the cost for actually removing them from the property as well. And I would just add a comment probably that aligns with what we have in our playbook, which you can see here. Ivo has generated a comment. Usually those comments are perfect the way that Ivo generates them. And so I would just click apply so that that change is generated in my red line in addition to the comment so that the landlord has context into why I made those changes.
Perfect. And then do we want to talk about condemnation as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another recommendation that we would um, look at. And when it comes to condemnation, we just want to make sure that if the property is condemned by eminent domain for any reason, we also have the ability to make any independent claims based on any of our property that was condemned or any cost that we incurred as a part of that condemnation. And based on what we have in our playbook, Ivo generated these red lines, which I would include. I think it covers what we're looking for exactly. And then here we also have, again, the comment that gives landlord context. And also there's an important point here in that last red line that we have this ability so long as our claim does not diminish the landlord's award, right? And so I think it's important to include in that in the comment so that the landlord understands we're not trying to diminish your right to a claim by any means. We just want to make sure that we also have the right to make a claim, if we so choose.
amazing. And then I guess for those, once you get more and more familiar with the tool, a really easy way to sort of do a quick review is actually just press apply all at the very end, and then you can review the agreement as a whole, and then just look at the red lines from the document as is. And if you need to clarify anything, you can click on the red line, and I will bring back up the suggested red line that is done to tell you why it's made that recommendation for you. Cool, amazing. Anything else you want to talk about, or do we have any questions from?
There are some questions in chat. So um, Blair asked, do you find that other than the time it takes to get agreements into Ivo, are there any issues with not having Ironclad connected? Is there any issue with data in Ironclad being da different than data in Ivo?
No, we haven't had any issues from taking what we have in Ironclad and using it in Ivo. Like I haven't experienced any changes or any issues with data being different. It's all sort of a one for one, I guess, transaction.
Awesome. And Nam is asking, curious how the playbook is built into Ivo. Does it simply reference your existing playbook or is it integrated? Does Ivo automatically know which playbook to use or do users select each time? Caitlin, I'm gonna let you answer first, but Ling, I know we're working on something really cool, so I would love for your input as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll defer on the actual like mechanics of how it works, but I mean, for us, it was as simple as sending the Ivo team our manual Word version of a playbook, and they took that, did their magic, and once it was ready, I could basically open Word again, use that review 2.0, and you do have to select which playbook you want to run your agreement against. But there is just a drop down menu and it includes the list of playbooks that your company has asked Ivo to make available to you. And so that is how we use the playbook in Ivo.
Yeah, and then we do have a very exciting feature coming out in the next few days, and it's called a self-serve playbook builder. And what it is you do have the option to almost like a chat style interface to make your own playbook, either from your repository of already executed documents. So Ivo can like take a look at your historically negotiated agreements, take a look at the positions that look standard or any positions that seem like deviations and add them as like fallback clauses. Or you can upload, like your template document or like a playbook document that you already have in-house, and Ivo will just automatically generate that playbook for you. Obviously, you still have the legal engineering team on hand to make any tweaks or make any iterations, or if you just still want us to provide that sort of service for you, it's totally possible.
And for those not too familiar with our legal engineering team, they are all trained contract attorneys. So you're definitely in good hands. And I see that Toby has helped to respond to Nam as well. So very cool. Thank you, Toby. From Derek for Caitlin, how often do you use Assistant and in what ways?
I would say I use Assistant every time I review an agreement. So sometimes I may find that there are things I want to mark up that weren't necessarily a part of our playbook, right? It's just additional context I've received from my business colleagues that I know this I want to mark up, but it's not one of our typical positions. I will use Assistant to generate that. And so I will provide that context to the assistant, basically saying, my business colleague has suggested that we want to have a right to terminate the lease. This is not a typical arrangement you would see in a lease agreement, but we have X, Y, and Z circumstances in this case. by which we want to terminate the agreement. We also want the landlord to know that any termination would come with, payment from us for that loss of time in the remaining lease agreement. Can you generate red lines to capture this concept? And then when I use, just run the assistant, it will generate red lines in whatever um, section is most relevant to that particular red line that I can include with the red lines that were already generated with the playbook. So I tend to use Assistant every time I open up Ivo for those sort of nuanced situations. But it sounds like with Bling's uh, announcement just now about that new feature, we might just be able to update our playbooks sort of in real time with those additional pieces that I've been using Assistant for. So um, really cool. I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ling.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think the more exciting addition to the Self Playbook Builder is over time, we can also make dynamic recommendations. So Ivor will be able to look at your recently negotiated agreements and see, oh, it looks like your net payment terms is now 60 days instead of 45 days. Like, do you want us to update your playbook to reflect that accordingly? So that's something that's also really exciting and takes sort of the manual decisions and manual review of our positions and how it evolved over time out of your hands.
Very exciting. I am going to help ask one last question, and then I think we can keep the next two and keep moving because we have some really great things to chat about. So Mariah and Lawrence have pretty similar questions. If a company does not have playbooks or has a playbook that doesn't meet this IVO specific format, does IVO build them? If yes, what is the process?
Yeah, Mariah, it's really easy. So we do, yeah, our team of legal engineers can take whatever documents you have, and then we'll be able to surface legal positions and input that into Ivo. But like we recently announced, that could be all self-serve done as well if you'd want to do that through the self-serve process.
Cool. Shall we keep moving? For the rest of the questions, Alanis, Chris, I have it on my notes app, so we'll get to it at the end of the session.
So. All right. And speaking of assistant, let me just change my screen really quick. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, one second. Okay, can you guys see the correct screen?
Yep.
Okay, amazing. So speaking of assistant, now it's 12:30 p.m. and the business has just requested for a quick summary of how a certain agreement has changed over time. And I know before AI, what I used to do is I would like literally print out, well, I would have to go hunt those agreements down. Then I would print those agreements out and I have my sticky notes and my highlighting out to see what has been changed over time. But instead of doing that now with Ivo, Caitlin, do you want to talk us through how you can use Ivo to surface amendments in a matter of minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So another way I like to use Assistant is exactly for this sort of risk memo or summary exercise. And so if, let's say, for instance, the business has a lease agreement with a co-working space, and over time we have amended that agreement, and now we have a third, fourth, fifth amendment that they want to understand how it differs from the previous versions. You can upload documents to the assistant with a little paperclip icon, and it will just take you to your folders, you upload the specific documents, and then you prompt the assistant in the same way Ling is doing now. And oh, sorry, I was gonna sh say before you press that button, Ling, there's an icon as well here that is like a magic pencil, and I love using that because no matter what you put in that prompt area, that magic pencil will turn your prompt into like a way better version of what you've provided. So yes, thank you, Ling. So as you can see, Ling just had like a sentence like, hey, here's 3 documents. Can you tell me what's changed? And then with that magic pen, Ivo changed it into this much more robust, um, explicit prompt, which I think really helps with the outcome.
Amazing. Yeah. And then for those of you that unaware, I've actually just moved on to our assistant in the web version. We also do have assistant in Word, and then it really is like a personal preference which one you like to use. If you did have the membership agreement in front of you, or if you had like a template amendment agreement in front of you and you needed to update a new amendment agreement in front of you and you wanted able to directly redline that document, I would probably use the Word add-in. Whereas if you just needed to see what has changed over time, you could probably just use the web add-in.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because if you're not like looking for the red line and you just sort of want that summary, that you kind of have to toggle with the Ivo add-in on the side of Word, and the web-based version is just all sort of there on your screen. So I think from a visual standpoint, it's definitely helpful. Okay, so when you run the assistant, yeah, I'll just if I'll go ahead if that's okay, Lee.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you run the assistant, it will generate this sort of summary and then a table, which is super helpful, so you can see across categories what has actually changed. So for instance, we've uploaded the base agreement in addition to 3 additional amendments. I know, is it gonna have you do it all over again?
No, let me pull up. Yeah, we're back.
Okay, technology, right? Um, So you can see the nature of each amendment, the term of commitment. And so let's say, for instance, my business partner was asking me about Amendment 3, like what has changed. I can confidently say, oh, this isn't necessarily a change of the term or the office space. We're just doing a work order from materials. And so if that is not your intent, let me know, because this particular amendment doesn't cover anything other than a change in fees or costs or materials. And so it's just a really quick way to say, yep, this looks like what we've done before. The only changes are X, Y, and Z. Are these the intended changes? If so, we're good to go. And that took all of 4 minutes. So, like you said, Ling, it would have been previously a process of like reviewing each amendment, actually comparing the terms, running a red line potentially. So it really does save a ton of time and effort on probably a quick question you got in Slack from someone who thought, it wouldn't take a long time to do. So really helpful in that context of comparing agreements in the same sort of family.
Yeah, and then just like a quick tip is you can always download these comparison charts and they'll open up as like a Word document, and you can just copy and paste that and send it back into to whoever Slacked you. And it's all set out for you in a table format.
And if, like, let's say, for instance, you send it to your business partner, which happens to me a lot, and they come back with a chat question or an email like, oh, okay, well, can you tell me about X or can you tell me about Z? And it's like, well, wait, all you asked for was about A. So then you have to go, you would previously have to like sort of review it all over again. But if you see on the right side of the screen, there is this history piece where I can just open up Ivo again, go to my history and look at when I ran this before. And I can ask additional questions, right? And the assistant. So can you tell me about specifically the discount and how it's changed, or the cost and how it's changed, or what specific materials were added? Um, I can ask and iterate on this conversation with Ivo, and I don't have to start all over again, which I think is also really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So that's Ivo's web assistant. And then let's say it is now in the afternoon, it's 2:30 p.m. And again, got pinged by a business partner on another question. The question comes in, it's a complex real estate question. Caitlin, tell us about this one. Like, how would you approach it? And yeah, what would you normally have to do and in order to engage outside counsel?
Yeah, I think for this particular question, it was a pretty nuanced one about different regulations that were cited, or different things that were cited in various agreements. And we had been working with outside counsel on this deal, but this was sort of an urgent request. And I think we can all attest to the process of reaching out to outside counsel via email, having them respond, asking them to do something urgently. And, they've got a ton of other things on their plate, and then you have the cost associated with that. So this was an instance we thought that might be good for Ivo's deep research function, um, because you can sort of look into, or it will look into those specific regulations and let me know if what we intend to say in the agreement is actually what we're saying, based on what it pulls from those regulations, which in this case, um, allowed us to go ahead in an urgent capacity without having to reach out to outside counsel. So not only did we save money, but we also saved time. And so from a sort of win perspective for us, that was amazing that Ivo could do that. And we look good to our business partners because we've avoided cost and we've saved time. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, so what I'm showing here now is yeah, the ability to upload documents or give Ivo context on what you're doing. Again, you prompt Ivo to just tell you, assume you are an expert in New York real estate. Can you undertake some legal research to confirm that this letter waives the requirements to remove personal property from the premises per the lease, sublease, and sub-sublease, which are uploaded as underlying documents. And then, yeah, you again, as Caitlin has helpfully mentioned, you can use that little magic wand button, and then just make sure that the deep legal research is toggled on. Our legal research sources are primary and secondary sources. They have all been verified, vetted by our team of legal engineers. It will never look to any source that is not a primary or secondary source that's legally verified. And we are also very close to be partnering up with third-party legal research partners to bring those legal databases into Ivo Deep Research as well. Cool. And then for the sake of time, again, as deep legal research does take a little while to look at the laws and read your underlying contracts and look to legal sources. I have preloaded this result. Let me. And yeah, this is the okay, Ellen, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, of course. So, um, this analysis is what is produced after you do that deep research, right? So, I uploaded a letter that I had drafted, intending to waive certain things from our obligations once we leave the premises, sort of like when we initially talked about our lease red lines and removing specialty alterations. And so we had negotiated with the landlord to not be liable for that. And, we wanted to make sure that was waived properly. And this deep research did something we would normally ask outside counsel to do, which is check against local regulations, local laws to make sure that our waiver is valid and enforceable. And that is the analysis that the deep research provided after providing the documents and the prompt. So you can review the analysis and it will flag certain things and it will, basically give you an overview of whether what you're intending is what is actually happening in the draft. And I think in this particular case, the draft was good as written, but there were certain things that were flagged that made me think, oh, okay, actually, this isn't something I thought about. Let me flag it for my business colleagues. Or, maybe this was broadly drafted, but we want it to be a bit more narrow. So I think it was really helpful in that it gave us the context we needed to make a decision about whether we were ready to move forward with signatures or if we needed to revise it a bit more.
Yeah. And then as you can see on my screen, with Deep Legal Research, you do have the ability to download the memo, an in-depth memo, and it provides sort of inline citations that you can click on and verify to make sure that everything that in the memo is in accordance with the correct legislation or correct code.
I think
Cool.
this is directly related to a question from Christopher, who also says hello to Caitlin from your old family at Sumitomo. So, Caitlin,
Oh,
where are you calling from?
amazing. Oh, I love things when things come full circle like that. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Love it. How does assistant substantiate its outputs through citations, traceable reasoning, or validation steps? And how is the assistant trained and updated?
Well,
I'll let
probably
you
more,
handle that, Ling.
yeah, probably more of a question for us. Um, again, like we have a team of in-house lawyers and our legal engineering team who verifies all our legal sources before we let Ivo pull from those sources. And so it'll never look to like Wikipedia or some random, lawyer's opinion on a blog post. And then, like I said, we are going to be working with third-party legal databases to make sure that we have those available to legal teams as well. And then in terms of training our models, it is a matter of we do have thumbs up, thumbs down feedback coming into Assistant, and our product and engineering team is consistently doing benchmarking evals to make sure that accurate results stay accurate and stay like transparent and in the like most up-to-date versions. And then I think did that cover almost all of the question?
I think so. Christopher also had a question on Q&A. This is more review related, but can we leverage Ivo to assist with reviewing and negotiating contracts that lack a corresponding playbook? And if so, how does it function in such scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were running the lease agreement, that was through a playbook, but you can absolutely run agreements against Ivo without a playbook. And all you need to do is, I'll just share my screen again, is go into when you are pressing the review button, instead of clicking a playbook, if you don't have a playbook, is click into this button called risk flags, and that will flag anything that is either outside of your playbook or, if you don't have a playbook, it's going to look at the market and see what are onerous and risky provisions that this third party has thrown at you and flag that for you and make red line recommendations based on that. And you can actually set the market parameters that you want it to compare to against a certain governing law, document type, and the industry that you're working in.
Awesome. Thank you, Ling. There are a couple of intelligence questions as well, but I know you have a couple more questions for Caitlin, so we might want to save that to maybe like 5 minutes before the session ends, and we can run like a quick overview of intelligence as well.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for walking us through a random Tuesday and what that looks like for you now that you are leveraging AI. I guess in terms of looking forward, what is something, I'd love to spend some time to just chat through what the team is still trying to figure out in relation to legal AI. Now that Ivo has been part of the Pinterest legal team's workflow for more than a year.
Yeah, I think what we're still trying to figure out is tied to like all of the technology that continues to become available. For instance, we talked about the CLM capacity of Ivo, and as Ivo continues to mature and progress as a product, looking at how we can integrate all of our solutions into one tool, I think is something we want to explore. Looking at how we can be more efficient with our use of AI, essentially. I think right now, AI is kind of like a candy store, and we're all just like kids, like, oh, what's the best one? Or, which should I choose? And I think that can create more work just trying to get up to speed with how each particular technology works and um, iterates. So I think at this point we're at a place where we want to understand how we can make the tools we have more efficient for us in terms of a one-stop shop. So I think that's where we're at.
And then for the general counsels and heads of legals that are, and any senior legal ops teams that are watching, what do you think is sort of conversations that they need to have with their team before evaluating and going down legal AI tools?
I mean, I think you have to start from the bottom, really, with like not what tool should we buy, but do we actually know our positions? Do we actually have a playbook? Do we have positions we can articulate to an AI product to actually be helpful to us? Because if not, in no matter what tool you select, it's not going to help you succeed. And so I think that internal alignment work is what really comes first and where you need to start.
Yeah, and I think something that I've been hearing is maybe look at your tool stack that you have existing today and find out what is working, what is not working. What do you need to build on top of that existing tech stack? What is it that is not working? What do you want to rip out and replace with? And so, yeah, that's probably a really good starting point as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. I'll pass it back over to you, CX.
Awesome. Sounds like we're ready to get back into questions. So just catching up on some of the questions as well. So Alanis, and this ties back into intelligence link, but I had a question around what is the main difference in having Ivo connected to a CLM versus not? Is it repository connectivity or maybe automated reviews?
Yeah, I think the main difference between having it connected to a repository is that when you're reviewing agreements, we also have like a benchmarking feature where you can see a click into it, and then Ivo can see your repository of like previously negotiated lease agreements and see how those positions stack up against the current lease agreement that you're reviewing. And so I've always been able to make or generate recommended red lines based on like, hey, it looks like your position to do with condemnation has always been this, but this lease agreement is actually pointing to a different position. Do you want us to change that? And so that's sort of an added benefit to if you do have the IVO repository plugged in with Review.
Very cool. Chris had a question. I know he had to drop, but he did ask for us to respond to it as well. Is the product of the I believe the playbook the new playbook creation feature materially different than what you can do with Assistant today?
It's not materially different. It is a it's still a chat experience, but you do have the ability at the end to obviously click a button and have that playbook imported or uploaded directly to your playbook workspace. And so I guess that's kind of the main difference is, yeah, it's still a chat assistant function, but yeah, it's like a one-click button to ensure that your positions in your playbook is good to go and all loaded into your workspace.
Awesome. Let's see. Next question. I think there were a couple of questions on the repository. Oh, before I forget, let's get to Nicholas's question. When sharing docs and drafts with Ivo, how do you handle confidentiality obligations to your customer or the third party that you are negotiating with? Are you concerned with there being a breach of confidentiality?
Um, No, I'm not concerned about that. I think our documents aren't being shared anywhere outside of Ivo. And so I'm not concerned about any breach of confidentiality with our counterparties. Also when our paper with Ivo, I believe there are clauses about this particular issue. So we can rest assured that we don't need to be concerned about confidentiality. I think this software is different than saying using Claude or ChatGPT because there is no negotiated contract there. You just sort of use it and you can toggle on whether it keeps memory or what have you, but um, there is no mutual sort of obligation there. And so, although we have access to other AI technology, I like to use Ivo specifically for my contract reviews because I am certain I don't need to worry about that with Ivo.
Awesome. Cool. So there are a couple other questions as well. I know we have 2 more minutes. Um, so we might be able to speed run through this. I think this is related to the prompt that we had for the second use case, but Derek asks, would this do the same as the composite view elsewhere within Ivo?
Yes, Derek, that's a great question. Yes, you are able to, and for those of you that on this call that don't know what composite view is, if you want to see how an agreement has been changed over time in our Ivo repository feature, you are able to see at a glance how amendments have changed your underlying agreement all at once. And yeah, we're very happy to show you that. And you can reach out to me or the Ivo team to give you a quick demo on how that can be done.
Awesome. So we have 1 more minute. I think we can start wrapping up, Mariah. I will have someone respond to your question offline, and we'll edit to our follow-ups as well. But thanks for being such a great crowd, and thank you for all of the great insight, Ling and Caitlin. Any finishing thoughts? I'm
No, I mean I'm excited to hear about all of the new features and capabilities that Eva has. I think we love to have access to those as soon as they're ready. So the one you mentioned today sounds really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. If you have a long weekend, enjoy the long weekend. If not, you're one day away. So, thanks all. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.